The tires crunched sharply as we veered off the highway. I felt it in my back before I saw where we were an empty gravel turnout with nothing but dry brush and the faint hum of power lines above. Caleb didn't say anything at first. He shifted the car into park, leaned forward against the wheel, then sat back and stared straight ahead. "I can't take you anymore," he said. His voice flat like he was announcing the weather. I turned toward him slowly. "What did you say?" He got out. My seatbelt was still on when he opened the passenger door. Out. I blinked at him, confused. My hand went instinctively to the seat beside me, searching for my bag. He'd taken it at the gas station, said it'd be safer in the trunk. I didn't argue. I never argued with him, hadn't for years. "Caleb, come on," I said quietly. "This isn't funny." He reached into the back, pulled out my canvas bag, and dropped it onto the gravel. I looked at it. Empty. The shape was wrong. I knew what wasn't inside. "Where's my, you'll figure it out. You always do." The words cut more than the cold. Then he shut the door. Just like that. Slammed it hard. Got in. Drove off. No look back. Just the spinning of tires and the sting of dust kicked into my face. I stood there, not moving one foot, still half, in the turnout, half on the shoulder. Cars whipped by, indifferent. It took a full minute before I bent down and picked up the bag. I opened it. As expected, tissues, a half-used lip balm, my reading glasses, a church bulletin from 2 Sundays ago. But no phone, no wallet, no ID. He'd taken everything that connected me to the world, then left me by the road like something expired. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just started walking toward the sound of traffic, the crunch of gravel under my shoes, the only reminder I was still here. The first drop hit my cheek like a warning. Cold, sharp, the kind of rain that doesn't soak you all at once, just creeps under your collar until your skin goes numb. There was no sidewalk, no shoulder to speak of, just a narrow strip of dirt and a ditch filled with soggy wrappers and crushed bottles. I stayed close to the edge, hugging my arms around myself, walking nowhere. Each car that flew past sent wind slicing against my clothes, but none slowed down. Eventually, I stopped. My knees had begun to shake, not from weakness, just from cold. I crouched near the guardrail, sitting on the curb like someone waiting for a bus that didn't come anymore. My hands wouldn't stay still. I tucked them under my thighs. When the pickup truck slowed, I didn't look up at first. The engine idled beside me, warm air puffing out the exhaust. Then the window rolled down, and a voice, firm but kind, cut through the wet air. "You okay, ma'am?" I looked up. Older man, late 60s maybe. Worn ball cap. Eyes like someone who'd seen bad days too. I didn't answer right away. My throat didn't want to work. But I nodded. "Hop in," he said, jerking his thumb toward the passenger side. "My wife would kill me if I left you like this." The seat was warm. The heat vents were blasting. I pressed my hands against them like a child. He didn't ask for details. Just said his name was Jonah and asked if I liked coffee. He drove me 15 minutes down the road to a diner tucked behind a line of tired trees. The kind of place with vinyl booths and faded pie signs taped to the counter. He ordered coffee for both of us. I sipped it slowly, the mug too hot for my fingers at first. When he stood to leave, he nodded once, like we shared a quiet understanding. Later, the waitress told me he'd paid for 2 extra hours of heat and coffee without saying a word. Lena brought me a folded blanket without a word, just placed it on the table beside my mug and gave me the smallest smile, half permission, half understanding. I slid down in the booth, pulled the blanket over my lap, and let my body give in. I didn't sleep exactly. Just close my eyes and listen to the quiet clinking of dishes and the murmur of 2 truckers talking at the counter. By dawn, the night manager came over and asked if I was feeling all right. I nodded and started to rise. "You want breakfast?" he asked. I hesitated. "You could mop a few tiles out back. Nothing fancy. Just a trade." So I did. The mop was heavier than I expected and the water bucket left streaks. But I cleaned the back hallway and the staff break room. Afterward, they gave me eggs toast and a paper cup of orange juice. I stayed until the breakfast crowd began filling the booths. Then I left with the blanket tucked under my arm and Jonah's directions written on a sugar packet. The shelter wasn't far. Tucked behind a strip mall, it looked more like a converted office than anything else. I gave them my name and they gave me a clipboard. No one asked what brought me there. That night, I lay on a narrow cot with a sheet that barely reached my shoulders. The fluorescent light above me hummed like it was trying to stay awake. So did I. Somewhere in my chest, I thought of Caleb's voice, the way he always answered. Calls on speaker, always loud, always performing. I imagined him telling my cousin I'd moved to Florida. "She's doing great," I could hear him say. "Warmer weather's good for her joints." I was 2 hours from home. My hip ached from the floor mop. My feet were still blistered from the walk. No one knew where I was. Not really. Not even me. The next morning, I tightened the blanket over my shoulders, sat up straight, and asked the woman at the front desk where the nearest public phone was. The shelter's caseworker, soft-spoken, organized, and tireless, sat beside me at a chipped desk and slid a form in front of me. Within an hour, I had a prepaid phone, $10 of credit, and a trembling sense of connectivity I wasn't sure I wanted. The first call I made was not to beg, not to scream, not to repair anything. I called to understand. Caleb's voicemail greeting was cheerful and rehearsed. "Hey, it's me. Leave something good." The beep sounded more brutal than any slammed door. I hung up without speaking. My thumb hovered too long over the banking app before I convinced myself to open it. The credit union account was old created when Caleb got his first job and needed help managing adult stuff, as he put it. I forgot to remove my name, and he forgot to remove my paycheck. The balance wasn't empty, but the pattern was unmistakable. Every month, like clockwork deposits from Social Security, landed my benefits for my late husband's years at the paper mill. Every month, Caleb drained it. Not entirely, never enough to alert the bank. Just enough to live comfortably on someone else's calm. Grocery chains, rideshare tips, electronic stores, business travel charges, a flight to Phoenix tagged as conference, hotel bookings that looked more like resorts than convention centers. No late fees, no overdrafts, no panic, just casual siphoning. I scrolled. My heart didn't pound, it sharpened. He hadn't left me on the side of the road out of frustration. That moment was personal. The months before, it were strategy. All those years I thought he needed support. He never needed support. He needed access. The screen dimmed before I blinked again. My reflection hovered in it, tired older reel. A knock sounded on the shelter's open office door. The caseworker leaned in gently. "You doing okay, Marlette?" I locked the phone and stood. "I need a job," I said, because understanding the wound was one thing. Learning to live without bleeding was next. The library smelled the same as it did 20 years ago, binding glue carpet cleaner, and that faint trace of dust the air never fully lets go. The front desk clerk handed me a paper form, and I filled it out with a borrowed pen, my handwriting slower than it used to be. The director came out after 10 minutes. Her name was Judith, and I remembered her as a quiet girl in my sophomore poetry class, the one who always sat near the window and never read her work aloud. "Mrs. Rowe?" she said, her eyes widening. "I didn't recognize you at first." I smiled. I still answer to that. She didn't ask why I was there, just nodded at the form and said, "We could use help with reshelving and book repair. It's only 15 hours a week, but it's steady." I thanked her. She handed me a lanyard. That was it. No orientation, just quiet welcome. That night I didn't go back to the shelter. I used a portion of the emergency stipend Judith handed me and paid for a room at the Valley Inn. No questions asked. just a chipped keycard and a small, plastic-wrapped bar of soap. The bed had dents in all the wrong places, and the heat rattled, but it was mine for the night. No one else's snoring. No light overhead that never turned off. Just 4 walls thin but solid. I lay down and breathed without holding anything back. When the first paycheck came a week later, I didn't go out to celebrate. I walked to the consignment store and bought a used handbag, nothing fancy, but it had a zipper that worked and space for something new. Inside it, I slid a manila folder. On the tab, I wrote, Plan B. Judith waved me over to the front desk just before closing. "Someone called for you," she said, handing me a pink slip with a name scribbled at the top, Elaine Jonah's wife. I called back on my break. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Jonah told me what happened. I figured you might need something steadier than a motel or a shelter. We have a room above the garage. It's not charity, it's just space. Use it or don't." There was no apology in her tone, no condescension, just clean level ground. I said yes. That Friday after work, Jonah picked me up in the same truck. Only this time, I didn't shiver when I opened the door. The room was small, square, and smelled faintly of paint and mothballs. It had a clean mattress, a chipped wooden desk, and a lamp with one working bulb. There was a kettle beside a stack of mismatched mugs and a thin curtain that fluttered when the wind pushed through the window seam. For the first time since the roadside, I unpacked. I opened the folder I'd labeled Plan B and spread everything across the desk. I wrote down every bank charge Caleb had made, every date, every hotel. I wrote the full story in longhand from the gas station to the moment his taillights disappeared. Then I walked to the community center on Main Street and asked to speak with someone from legal aid. The woman behind the desk was young, not much older than Caleb, but she listened like she'd been carrying stories like mine for years. I handed her the papers without flinching. She flipped through them slowly. "You have grounds," she said. "Clear ones." I sat back in the chair, something unclenching behind my ribs. That night, I boiled water for tea and sat at the desk with the lamp on. I didn't feel strong, not exactly, but I didn't feel small either. I took a new folder from the drawer, wrote down the date, and labeled it Next Steps. The grass had grown taller than I remembered. The hedge I used to trim every spring had thinned out patchy and wild. But the bones of the house were the same. White siding, narrow porch, one broken shingle that never quite stayed put. I stood on the sidewalk across the street, with the deed in my coat pocket, and a quiet in my chest I couldn't name. After David died, I couldn't bear the silence. Caleb had offered to move in, said it would keep the place in the family. His wife brought houseplants and opinions. They said I could have the guest room, the one with no closet and a leaky window. At first it worked, then it didn't. They started making little comments, asking me to knock before entering my own kitchen, suggesting I visit friends more often. Then one night, I found my photos stacked in a drawer, replaced with their wedding canvas. I hadn't signed anything. No transfer. No rental. Nothing but time. Legal aid walked me through every step. The house was still mine, technically, legally, quietly mine. So I acted. The movers arrived at 8 sharp on a Thursday, just as planned. Caleb was at work. His wife had gone to her yoga class, same as every week. Boxes were labeled and taped. Nothing was damaged. I didn't touch a single item myself. I just stood by the door with the locksmith. The last box rolled down the ramp and into the van. The locksmith turned to me. "New keys," he said. "Front, back, and side." I took them. The house didn't feel angry. It felt still. I walked through the empty living room one last time and sat briefly in the chair they used to call hers, as if I didn't know it had once been mine. The woman at the credit union didn't blink when I told her I needed to freeze the account. She looked up the number, confirmed both names, and nodded once. "It'll be locked by end of day," she said. "No further withdrawals." I thanked her and stepped outside into the sharp afternoon air. My coat wasn't warm enough, but my spine felt straighter. From a bench across the street, I called Social Security. The hold music was long, but I waited. When the voice came on, I asked to update my deposit destination. No explanation, no emotion, just logistics. The next day at the library, Caleb showed up. I saw him through the glass, nervous energy, wrapped in expensive sneakers and a down jacket I didn't recognize. He walked up to the front desk. "Mom," he said, like it was a performance. "Can we talk?" I set down the returns cart and stepped aside with him, just far enough to be out of earshot, but close enough to stay in view of Judith and the other clerks. "I saw the account," he said tightly. "Why would you—" "I updated my information," I said. "Calm, even. Everything is in my name now." He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "You didn't have to." "I did," I replied. "It's done." He opened his mouth again, but I had already turned. I walked back toward the returns desk and picked up the next cart. He didn't follow. That night I stood in my kitchen mine again and scooped soil into the ceramic pots I'd found in the attic. Basil thyme and one small rosemary stem that might make it. I placed them on the windowsill where the afternoon light hit just right. My back ached, but I didn't sit yet. I moved through the house room by room, adjusting, restoring, letting the silence come back in. When I finally lay down in my bed, the sheets were stiff from air drying, but they smelled like home. The lock on the bedroom door slid easily into place. Elaine called on a Thursday afternoon, her voice as steady and practical as ever. "We're having roast chicken Sunday. Nothing fancy. Just food and chairs. You coming?" I baked the rolls myself that morning. Flour under my nails, cinnamon dust on the counter, apple slices soaked in lemon water to keep them crisp. It felt like something I used to do before everything got too loud or too crowded or too empty. Their kitchen was smaller than mine, but felt fuller. Jonah was wearing an apron that said King of the Grill, even though he hadn't stepped outside. Elaine pulled out a chair for me like it was already mine. We didn't toast. We didn't pray. Just passed plates and stories and let the silence between words be soft. I sat with a chipped mug of tea, one leg tucked under me, like I hadn't done in years. No one watched what I ate. No one corrected me mid-sentence. There were mismatched napkins and too much butter, and it was all fine. I felt fine. Better than fine. I felt seen. Elaine slid a small envelope across the table as I finished my tea. "Just a note," she said. "Nothing big. Inside a folded card with watercolor flowers and a few lines in careful print. Thank you for trusting us to care. You're always welcome here." I blinked once, smiled, slipped it into my bag. Later that night back home, I pulled out the folder. The one with receipts, the legal letters, the caseworker's notes. I added the card to the back, not because I needed to document anything, not for proof, but because something told me it belonged there, right between the financial statements and the return address labels I hadn't thrown out yet. It reminded me that some kindness doesn't require back pay. Some welcome doesn't need a signature. I placed the folder in the drawer beside my bed and turned off the lamp. Tomorrow I'd return the library key. Not to quit, but to trade it in. A position had opened, one with more hours and a title. I didn't plan to pass it, not exactly. I was taking the long way to the farmer's market, my choice now, not a detour. And there it was, the turnout on Route 9. The gravel hadn't changed much, just pushed deeper into the earth by tires and time. The weeds were taller, curling into each other like they'd stopped waiting to be cut. I kept walking. No pause. No ache in my chest, just the light brush of wind across my sleeves and the steady rhythm of my steps. A year ago, I sat there wondering what I'd done to be left. Now, I didn't need the answer. Some questions don't matter once you've chosen not to live inside them anymore. The folder was gone. Shredded, burned, maybe both. Every receipt, every statement, every date and signature, it had done its job. And like anything that served its purpose, I let it go. The house was mine again, not just in paperwork, but in air. I'd repainted the hallway, replaced the light in the bathroom, started a compost pile near the shed where the earth was softer. I left the guest room empty. I liked it that way. The library job became permanent last fall. Circulation led. Judith handed me the title with a grin and a sturdy binder. I'd made a habit of bringing apple slices on Fridays. They disappeared faster than the staff donuts. Elaine and Jonah still invited me for dinner. We rarely talked about anything serious. I liked that too. Not everything has to be a story. I passed the turnout without looking back the same way you'd pass a store that closed years ago, the kind you used to cry in front of and now barely recognize. The sun was warm against my back. I adjusted the canvas bag on my shoulder, half produce, half overdue books, and turned down the hill toward town. There was a bus schedule folded in my coat pocket. I didn't need it yet, but I liked knowing it was there.